It's early in the morning, and the world outside your small home is already stirring to life. The faint rustle of birds in the trees mixes with the distant sound of carts rolling across cobblestone streets. A gentle breeze carries the familiar sense of earth and smoke, mingling with the faintest trace of bread baking somewhere in the distance. You rise from your simple cot, stretching your limbs, feeling the coolness of the stone floor beneath your bare feet. It's still dark outside, but the day will soon begin in earnest. You step into the kitchen, a humble, warm room filled with the flickering light of a hearth fire. The smell of the firewood, rich with the scent of oak, fills the air, creating a sense of quiet comfort. On the hearth, a pot slowly simmers, the bubbling of broth adding a rhythmic, soothing sound to the atmosphere. Perhaps it is a simple vegetable stew, or perhaps some salted meat, something to keep you going through the long hours of labor ahead. But you're not alone in this kitchen. The faint sounds of others moving about your family, perhaps a servant or two, make you feel connected to the rhythm of daily life. The work that goes into preparing food, even for just one day, feels endless. As you begin your daily tasks, your mind drifts to what lies ahead in the marketplace, your usual stop after this. The sounds of voices rising in excited chatter, the thud of coins on wood, the scrape of carts unloading their wares, it's an experience you know well. Each visit is an opportunity to pick up something special for the day. You know where to find the freshest bread, the crispiest pastries, the quick bites that can sustain you through the busyness of your day. These foods, perhaps considered the junk food of the time, are as accessible as they are comforting. They may not be as grand or nourishing as a feast, but in their simplicity they bring a sense of relief, a brief escape from the heaviness of daily labor. You imagine the bustling marketplace in front of you, the stoves and carts sizzling with hot oil, turning out simple foods, pies with flaky, golden crusts, filled with whatever is in season, small loaves of bread, sometimes warm, sometimes stale, sold by the piece. It's nothing extravagant, but there's something alluring about it all, the smell of fried meat, the crunch of a hard crust, the sweet, sticky aroma of honey cakes or pastries filled with dried fruit. You could almost taste it now, the warmth of that fresh bread, still slightly crisp from the oven, the quick satisfaction of a well-made pie. Hot enough to burn your fingers, but so delicious you can't help but tear into it, knowing it's only for the moment, only a fleeting indulgence in the midst of a long, hard day. Even though the term junk food would never have crossed your mind then, there is a surprising parallel between those quick, filling foods and the ones we reach for today. They weren't luxurious, but they were accessible. They were a form of comfort in a world that wasn't always kind, a quick escape from hunger and weariness. These foods might have been quick to make, cheap to buy, and easy to consume on the go, but they were a far cry from the heavy, unsophisticated meals people often imagine medieval folk eating. And in their simplicity, they carried a certain power, a connection to the people who ate them, the lives they led, and the small, everyday joys they found. Perhaps you felt that too on days when you've been too tired, too hurried, or simply too weary to sit down for a proper meal. But the need for something to fill that hunger persists. The more you think about it, the more you realize that these foods, so often dismissed as simple or even unhealthy, were at the heart of everyday life for the people of the past. They weren't just sustenance, they were part of the fabric of their lives, a comfort, a reminder that, even in hard times, there was a way to take a moment for yourself. So, next time you grab something quick to eat, something familiar, something simple, consider the long history of quick, accessible food that has helped people get through their days all across time and space. Can you imagine what it would be like to indulge in a quick bite during a busy day, with the world moving around you in its usual way? What would your choice of food be if all you had was what was at hand? Something simple, yet comforting. Reflect on this as we journey through the surprising truth about medieval junk food, foods that might have seemed small and unimportant, but were actually central to the daily lives of those who lived long ago. Share your thoughts or let us know what you might have chosen for that quick, satisfying bite as we move forward together in this historical journey. The sounds of the market begin to reach your ears long before you see it. The distant hum of voices low and steady, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter or the sharp call of a merchant offering their wares, grows louder as you approach. The cobblestone streets underfoot are worn smooth by countless feet, some hurried, others leisurely, as people from all walks of life converge in this central place, drawn by the promise of food, goods, and conversation. You step into the marketplace, feeling the rush of warmth that comes from the gathered crowd, from the vendors selling their freshly made wares, and the heat of the bread oven stoking the air with tantalizing smells. The smell of roasting meats, beef perhaps, or game birds mixes with the scent of freshly baked bread and pastries as the steam rises from boiling pots of stew. It's a complex, inviting aroma that fills your senses, making your stomach stir. And, instinctively, that today, as on many days before, you'll be seeking a quick bite, something to fill the space between work and your next meal, something simple but satisfying. The marketplace is alive, teeming with people going about their business. The lower classes, like you, are moving through the crowd with purpose. There are bakers shouting out to passers-by, their hands covered in flour, offering loaves of bread that are crusty on the outside and soft within, still warm from the oven. The smell of that warm bread alone is enough to make your mouth water. It's an everyday food, simple but essential, and it's so much more than just sustenance. It's comfort in the form of warm, soft dough that you can carry with you, a quiet, accessible joy in the middle of a busy day. Nearby, a stall has a small, bubbling pot of meat stew, something hearty, rich with flavor, and served in chunks on wooden plates or in crude bowls. It's nothing extravagant, but it's a filling, warm meal that would carry you through until the next proper feast, which might be days away. You've seen these stews many times before in the hands of the lower classes who can't afford anything more refined. For them, it's the ultimate comfort food, something easy to grab, quick to eat, and hearty enough to ward off hunger. Then there are the pastries. Oh, the pastries. Flaky, golden, and filled with sweet or savory fillings, depending on the season and what the market can provide. Fruit pies oozing with apples, pears, or berries, or savory pies filled with meats and herbs. You've seen them baked in the back of a stall, their edges crispy, the filling just beginning to bubble out from the sides, tempting you to try a bite. These are the kinds of foods you look for when the day has been long. Your energy is fading, and you need something that can satisfy you quickly and with minimal fuss. There's something about the way the crust gives way to the filling that feels like a reward for enduring the day's labor. These foods, pies, bread, pastries might not seem like much, especially when compared to the elaborate feasts of the wealthy, but they are the backbone of your daily life. They are affordable, accessible, and above all, comforting. For the common folk, they are not luxuries but necessities. You can buy a loaf of bread for a coin or two, a pie for the same amount. It's not expensive, not something that will empty your purse, but it's enough to fill you up and give you the energy to keep moving forward. What's most remarkable is the way these foods, these simple, humble snacks, become a part of the rhythm of life. The marketplace is where they are born, but they become part of the world beyond it too. When you are out on the streets, working the land, caring for your family, or running errands, you often need something quick to sustain you. A piece of bread, a small pastry, these are the quick bites that keep you going. They're practical, not meant for long hours of enjoyment, but for short, sweet moments of relief. Perhaps you even stop to chat with the vendor who runs the pie stall. She knows you by sight, knows what you usually like, a savory pie with a little extra salt, the one with the crispest crust. You smile and exchange pleasantries, your hands already reaching for the warm pastry, the price already known between you. You take a bite, the heat of the crust mingling with the savory filling, and for a moment all feels right in the world. This is a brief escape from the world of hard work, the long hours, and the drudgery of daily life. It's a comfort, a quick indulgence, something you can enjoy without guilt. The beauty of the medieval marketplace is that it's a place where food, dose, and tea need to be elaborate to be meaningful. A simple loaf of bread or a warm pastry can carry the same joy as a feast. And it's easy to see how these foods, so accessible and so affordable, became the foundation of comfort for many. Even the lower classes, who had little to spare, could afford these simple indulgences. You see it every day in the way the men and women who walk beside you snatch a quick bite as they hurry to and fro. These small foods, these quick meals, become part of the fabric of your life, woven into the daily rhythm of work, rest, and play. As you walk further through the market, the sounds and smells still swirling around you, take a moment to reflect. If you were there, in that bustling medieval market, what would you choose to eat? What would you reach for first? Would it be the simple loaf of bread, warm from the oven, or perhaps a freshly baked pie with fruit oozing from the sides? Think about how these quick bites, simple and yet deeply satisfying, might have been the same kinds of food. We turn to today when we need something quick, something that doesn't require much thought but gives us the energy to keep going. Food connects us across time, doesn't it? These simple, accessible snacks have been part of human life for centuries, comforting us in our busiest and most exhausting moments. And even now, they remind us of the connection between what we eat and the way we live. What does food mean to you? How do the choices you make today echo the choices of those who came before you? Share your thoughts with us as we continue to explore the rich, comforting world of medieval eating. You walk through the marketplace, feeling the bustling energy of the crowd, the heat of the midday sun pressing down on your shoulders, your stomach beginning to stir with the need for something to eat. The long hours of labor have drained your energy, and though you still have work to do, you know it's time to take a brief pause. The air is thick with the aroma of baked goods, sizzling meats, and something rich and comforting that makes your mouth water. You're not looking for a feast today, just something quick, something to give you a little reprieve before you return to the grind. And there, among the stalls, is exactly what you're looking for. Food that's simple, indulgent, and just the right kind of comforting. Imagine yourself reaching for a warm, greasy pie. The flaky, golden crust is crisp on the outside, but as your teeth sink in, it gives way to a savory filling, perhaps a mix of meats, onions, and herbs, or maybe even just a bit of leftover stew. There's something satisfying about it. The crust, buttery and light, contrasts perfectly with the hearty filling inside. You can almost taste the saltiness, the richness of the ingredients, and the warmth that seeps into your bones with each bite. It's not fancy, but it doesn't need to be. It's food made for people who don't have the luxury of sitting down to a multi-course meal, but who still want something to fill their bellies and lift their spirits. And isn't that what food is supposed to do? Pies like these are the epitome of medieval convenience. They're quick to make, easy to carry, and filling enough to sustain you through a long afternoon. Often the ingredients used are whatever on hand leftovers from last night's stew or meat that's been preserved, all wrapped up in a simple pastry that's easy to make. These weren't gourmet dishes. They were made to keep people going. In a world where time was always scarce, where survival often meant working from dawn till dusk, these pies provided an indulgent escape from the hardships of daily life. And then there are the pastries, sweet or savory, depending on what's in season or what's affordable. Perhaps you're more in the mood for something sweet, the smell of honey and cinnamon drifting on the breeze. You stop at a stall selling pastries filled with dried fruits, or maybe a honey cake, its sticky sweetness enticing you as it catches the light of the sun. You reach for one, taking a bite as you move through the market, and you feel a little bit lighter with each mouthful. It's nothing fancy, but there's a satisfaction in the simplicity of it. The sugar, the soft pastry, the richness of the fruit filling, it's a little indulgence, something that makes the day feel less heavy, if only for a moment. These pastries, like the pies, are the kind of food that defines the medieval experience for the common folk. They aren't made to be savored over hours. They are made to be eaten quickly, to provide comfort and energy during the course of a busy day. The market is full of these quick snacks, greasy, sweet, or savory. You could choose from a wide variety depending on what you're in the mood for or what your purse can afford. The beauty of these foods lies not just in their flavor, but in their accessibility. For a few coins, you can satisfy your hunger and take a moment to rest. They are food made for people with little time, but a strong desire for something indulgent and filling. You might also stop by a vendor selling fried fish, small fish, battered and fried in hot oil, the crust crispy and golden. The smell alone is enough to pull you in. The oil, hot and fragrant, fills the air, and the fish, freshly fried, crackles as it's placed on a wooden board before you. You grab a piece, tearing into the crispy skin and juicy flesh, the saltiness of the fish balancing out the richness of the batter. It's a simple pleasure, a quick bite that fills you up without requiring too much effort. Fried fish, like pies and pastries, was often a food that could be eaten on the go, in between the tasks and chores of the day. Each of these foods, though often dismissed as junk today, were deeply practical in medieval society. Convenience was key. Life in the Middle Ages was rarely slow-paced or leisurely. People worked long hours with little time for anything other than the bare necessities. Food, in this world, needed to be quick, easy, and accessible, something that could fuel the body without taking too much time away from work. Pies, pastries, fried fish, these foods were a quick solution to hunger, indulgent enough to lift one's spirits, but simple enough not to demand too much attention. The market was a place where food was not about luxury, it was about survival and comfort. While the wealthy dined on elaborate feasts, the common folk turned to these quick, accessible snacks, foods that could be carried with them and eaten in moments of pause. There's something deeply human about it, the need for food that nourishes not just the body, but the soul. These simple meals were a form of self-care in a world that often demanded so much. They offered a chance to pause, to take a break, and to enjoy something sweet, salty, or savory in the midst of hard work. Can you feel the pull of these simple foods? Would you be tempted by these easily accessible, indulgent treats, or would you seek something else to sustain you? If you found yourself in that marketplace, surrounded by the rich aromas of fried fish, warm pies, and sweet pastries, what would you reach for first? Would you savor the comfort of a pastry, the warmth of a pie, or the saltiness of fried fish? It's a curious thought, isn't it? How, despite the centuries between us, the desire for simple, satisfying food remains the same. Leave your thoughts in the comments or share your own medieval food indulgence. Would you be swept away by the simple pleasures of medieval junk food? Or would you choose something different? I'd love to know. Imagine stepping into the grand hall of a medieval feast. The air is thick with the aroma of roasted meats, beef, lamb, and venison glowing under the flickering candlelight. You can hear the clink of silver goblets being filled with wine, the soft murmur of nobles exchanging pleasantries, and the low hum of music played by minstrels in the background. The tables are piled high with platters of food, each dish more extravagant than the last. There are pies filled with game birds, sugared almonds and fruits, spiced cakes, and pastries that gleam with sugar, decorated to the highest degree of opulence. It's a feast fit for kings, and the rich are indulging in everything that their wealth and status afford them. In stark contrast, just outside the grand hall, beyond the gilded walls and well-dressed guests, the common folk are gathering in the bustling marketplace. Here, the smells of freshly baked bread, sizzling fish, and warm pastries fill the air. The people moving through the stalls are not dining on whole roasted animals or elaborate spreads. Instead, their food is simple, practical, a small, flaky pie filled with leftover meat, a loaf of bread, or a humble bowl of stew. There's nothing particularly luxurious about the food of the commoners. Its sustenance, pure and simple, designed to keep the body going through long hours of labor. Yet despite the vast differences in wealth and social status, there's a fascinating overlap between the foods of the rich and the foods of the poor. The rich, who can afford to dine on the finest cuts of meat and the most extravagant sweets, still find themselves indulging in quick, comforting snacks. In fact, these small indulgences often mirror the very foods eaten by the common folk, but with one key difference: the rich can enjoy them in abundance and luxury, often in the form of grand feasts and festivals. At these events, the same greasy pies, sweet pastries, and quick bites that would have been found in the marketplace are served up on silver platters, their appearance polished and refined. Take the pastry, for instance. The common folk might buy a simple fruit pie, its crust warm and flaky, filled with whatever fruits are in season, perhaps apples or berries, It's simple, affordable, and comforting. But at a grand feast, the same kind of pie might be made with exotic fruits, sweetened with honey and spices, and adorned with intricate designs. The pie becomes a symbol of wealth and excess, not because of its flavor or the ingredients used, but because of its presentation and the sheer abundance with which it is served. The rich are indulging in the same kind of junk food, but their indulgence is marked by luxury, and it is available to them in a way that the common folk can only dream of. Even the humble loaf of bread, a staple in the diet of the lower classes, takes on a different form when served at the table of the wealthy. While the commoners might buy a simple round loaf of dark dense bread for a few pennies, the rich would enjoy loaves made from the finest white flour, perhaps flavored with exotic spices or infused with sweeteners, like honey or sugar. These loaves would be served alongside rich, creamy butter or even spread with luxurious jams made from rare fruits. The bread, in this case, becomes more than just sustenance. It's a statement of wealth and excess. And then there's the fried fish, a beloved food among the common folk, sold in the market stalls, often served on the go for those with little time. Fried in hot oil, the fish is a cheap, accessible source of protein, filling enough to keep you going through the long hours of work. But at a feast, fried fish might be served as an appetizer, seasoned with rare spices or deep-fried to a crisp perfection, its golden brown exterior reflecting the light of the flickering candles. The fish, once a simple snack, has now become a delicacy, and the rich are indulging in it with the same ease and pleasure that the poor do, but with far more extravagance and excess. It's fascinating, isn't it? Despite the great divide between the classes, food has a way of connecting people. The rich, in their abundance, seek comfort in the same kinds of foods that the poor rely on for survival. They indulge in the same quick snacks, pies, pastries, bread foods that are simple, satisfying, and easy to consume. The key difference, of course, is the way these foods are presented and consumed. The poor might buy a simple pie from a market stall, while the rich might be served that same pie, perhaps topped with gold leaf at a lavish banquet. But at their core, they are the same foods. Comfort food, quick food, indulgence made accessible to those who can afford it. Doesn't it feel strange, then, that even centuries ago, people were seeking comfort and quick indulgence in food? The desire for something warm and satisfying, something that requires little effort to prepare, but provides so much in terms of comfort, is a feeling that transcends time. The rich and the poor may have dined on different levels of food, but their needs were, in many ways, the same. They sought sustenance, they sought indulgence, and they sought moments of comfort amid the demands of their daily lives. Food, in many ways, is a bridge between the classes, a shared experience that connects us across time. It's a reminder that, regardless of our social standing, we all have the same basic needs: to nourish, to comfort, and to find solace in the simplest of things. As you think about the foods that connect us, consider how the same foods, those simple pastries, those hearty pies, those humble loaves of bread, were enjoyed by people from all walks of life, each one finding comfort in their own way. So, what do you think? Does it surprise you to learn that the rich indulged in the same kinds of comfort food as the poor? How do you think food connects us across time and social status? Share your thoughts, and let's reflect together on the timeless bond that food creates, linking us all through history, one bite at a time. The warmth of the hearth surrounds you as you step into your kitchen, the heart of your home. It's a simple room, humble by all measures, but it's filled with the comforting smells of food of bread, rising slowly in the oven, and the rich aroma of simmering stews that have been cooking all morning. The light from the fire casts gentle shadows on the stone walls, and you feel the calm of the room, the quiet power of creating something from nothing, a power that has been passed down through generations of women like you. It's a morning like many others, and you know what needs to be done. You have a full day ahead of you, kneading dough for bread, rolling out pastry for pies, perhaps preparing a quick snack for the children before they head out to their chores. Your hands are skilled in the art of food preparation. You move with purpose, yet there is a softness in your motions, as if this work is not just about feeding your family, but about connecting with them through something as simple and essential as food. You know the importance of what you do, even if the world around you doesn't always acknowledge it. The bread you bake, though simple, is a lifeline. The dough, made from flour, water, and a pinch of salt, will rise into a golden, crusty loaf that will nourish your family throughout the day. You've learned the rhythm of bread making, the kneading, the waiting, the shaping, the baking, and in each step, you pour not just your time but your care into the food. You think about the hands that came before you, the women who taught you these skills, and the generations of women who, in their kitchens, also took part in this quiet ritual of preparing food. It's not just bread that you're making today. You're also crafting pies, those small, comforting indulgences that will be tucked into the hands of your husband or children as they head out into the world. The pastry dough is soft and pliable, rolling out beneath your hands with ease. The filling is simple, perhaps a handful of berries, some dried fruit from last season, or whatever scraps of meat or vegetables you have left over from the previous evening's meal. It doesn't matter what you have to work with. What matters is the care with which you put it all together. Each pie is more than just food. It's a token of love, an offering of comfort that will sustain your loved ones, even when you can't be there to care for them in other ways. The food you prepare is, to most people, nothing special. It's junk food, some might say quick, convenient, and simple. But to you, it's a work of art. The pastries, the bread, the pies, they are the small indulgences that make life easier, even in difficult times. They are the small joys that keep people going when the weight of the world feels too heavy. You don't have time for elaborate feasts or delicate dishes. Your world is about efficiency, about providing for your family in ways that matter. These simple foods are a reflection of that easy to make, filling and nourishing, yet always crafted with care. You've often wondered about the women who came before you, your mother, her mother before her, and the countless women who have lived in this very house, in this very kitchen. They too have baked bread, rolled out pies, and crafted simple meals that carried them through the hardest days. You are part of a long line of women whose work goes unseen by many, but whose impact on the lives of their families is immeasurable. It's a quiet power that comes from the ability to nourish, to provide, and to care for others in such a simple, everyday way. And it's not just the physical act of cooking that holds power. It's the way food becomes a thread that connects you to your family. When you serve a warm loaf of bread, the children gather around, tearing pieces of the crust, savoring the warmth and simplicity of it. When you hand over a pie, still steaming from the oven, there's an unspoken understanding between you and those you love. You've cared for them, not just with your hands, but with your heart. Food is how you express that care, how you show your love, and how you keep your family grounded in a world that is always changing. In your hands, food becomes more than just fuel, it becomes an act of love and tradition. The quick meals you make, the junk food that sustains your family on busy days are part of a larger story. These foods are made with the same care, the same tradition as the grandest feasts. They are what you have to offer, what you can give, and what your family will remember long after the meal is over. As you continue your work rolling out dough, chopping vegetables, stirring a pot of stew, you feel a deep sense of connection to your family, to the generations of women who have done this same work before you and to the food itself. The act of cooking, of creating something from raw ingredients, is an intimate one. It's about more than just providing for your family's needs. It's about tradition, about passing down knowledge, about nurturing not just the body but the soul. So, as you stand in your kitchen, surrounded by the smells of bread, pastry, and stew, take a moment to reflect. What choices do you make when you cook or when you sit down to eat? How do the foods you prepare or consume connect you to your past, to your family, or to your own traditions? What power does food have in your life? How does it reflect care, love, and the desire to nourish not just the body but the heart? Food is such a profound part of our lives, and the tradition of home cooking has always been a silent yet powerful force. Reflect on how your own food choices may carry the weight of generations. How they reflect your culture, your history, and your love for those around you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How does food shape your connection to your family, your history, and your own traditions? Share your reflections, and let's keep the conversation going. Imagine walking through a bustling medieval market. the vibrant colors of the stalls and the sounds of the crowd around you stirring a sense of life in the air. As you pass by a spice merchant's stall, the air is thick with exotic aromas, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and ginger, each spice more alluring than the last. They've traveled across vast lands, coming from places far beyond your reach, and yet here they are, available for the right price. Their scents tantalize your senses, drawing you in. You can already picture the warm, comforting cakes, pies, and pastries that these spices could transform, turning them from simple treats into indulgences fit for royalty. Spices were once so rare, so exotic, that they were reserved for the wealthy, those who had the means to afford them. These small, humble jars of cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg were treasures, often imported at great cost, and for the common folk they were out of reach. But for the wealthy, spices were an integral part of their daily lives. They added depth and richness to meals, turning what would otherwise be simple dishes into something far more exotic and pleasurable. And it wasn't just the savory dishes that benefited from these spices. No, it was in the sweet treats that they truly shined. Imagine a cake rich, spiced, and moist. The sweet warmth of cinnamon and cloves fills the air as it bakes. The sugar in the batter melts into the dough, giving it a golden, soft texture that tempts you from the moment you take your first bite. This cake, though simple in ingredients, becomes an indulgence because of the spices, because of the sugar. The sweetness is heightened, the flavor deepened, and the cake becomes something to savor. It's no longer just a snack or a quick bite. It's a treat of luxury, an escape from the monotony of the everyday. In a world where life was often harsh and unpredictable, these sweet and spicy temptations provided comfort. A slice of cake or a piece of pie, sweetened with honey or sugar, was an early form of indulgence, one that allowed people to take a brief respite from the troubles of the world. The sweetness of sugar and the warmth of spices brought joy to the lives of those who could afford them, just as modern treatscakes, candies, and pastries bring joy to our own lives today. Sugar, in particular, was an expensive commodity in the medieval world. It was not something that most people could simply add to their daily diet. In fact, sugar was considered a luxury, something that only the rich could afford to indulge in regularly. It was used sparingly, often in small amounts, and its sweetness was savored slowly, making each bite feel like a rare gift. Whether it was sprinkled on top of a warm pastry or used to sweeten a cup of spiced wine, sugar transformed an ordinary dish into something special. But it wasn't just sugar that made these treats so tempting. The spices that were introduced into medieval kitchens brought a complexity and richness to food that was previously unknown. Cloves, with their warm, slightly bitter taste, added depth to pies and cakes. Nutmeg, with its sweet, almost woody aroma, made even the simplest of custards or puddings feel luxurious. Ginger, with its zesty, sharp flavor, gave a certain liveliness to cakes and breads, making them feel less like everyday fare and more like a special indulgence. These spices didn't just make food taste better. They made food feel like a celebration, a way to mark the passing of time with something enjoyable and comforting. The introduction of spices and sugar into medieval diets marked a shift in how people thought about food. No longer was food just about survival, it was about pleasure. It was about indulgence, even if it was only for a moment. These spices and sweeteners were the early foundations of what we might consider junk food today, comforting, indulgent treats that provided a brief escape from the challenges of daily life. And just like the treats we enjoy today, they offered a way to soothe the soul, to experience joy in a world that could sometimes be unforgiving. As these spices and sugars became more accessible over time, they began to spread beyond the rich and into the hands of the merchant classes and even, in rare cases, the common folk. A bit of sugar here, a sprinkle of cinnamon there, these small indulgences began to creep into more and more kitchens, turning simple pastries into something a little more luxurious. The same cakes, pies, and breads that were once plain and practical now had a touch of sweetness, a hint of spice, transforming them into something to be savored. But even as sugar and spices made their way into the homes of more people, they were still symbols of excess. While the common folk could enjoy these small treats on occasion, they were still beyond the reach of most. The rich, with their abundant supplies of sugar and exotic spices, could indulge in these sweet and spicy temptations whenever they wished. For the common people, though, these indulgences were rarer, more special. A small piece of cake or a spiced pastry was a luxury to be savored slowly, like a brief escape from the grind of daily life. As you reflect on this, think about how the addition of sugar and spice to food brought both joy and excess, and how, in many ways, it mirrored the indulgence we find in modern junk food. Just like today's treats, these early indulgences were about more than just food. They were about pleasure, comfort, and the desire to escape the challenges of the world, if only for a moment. They gave people something to look forward to, something to enjoy amidst the demands of life. How do you see sugar's role in modern junk food culture? Do you think that our cravings for sweet and indulgent foods are simply a continuation of a long history of pleasure and comfort? I'd love to hear your thoughts on how food, especially sweets and spices, continues to shape our experiences today. Share your reflections in the comments or on social media, and let's continue exploring this timeless connection between indulgence, food, and the joy they bring to our lives. In the warm, bustling kitchens of medieval homes, food was a constant source of comfort and indulgence. The rich golden crust of a freshly baked pie, the sweetness of honey cakes, the rich aroma of roasted meats, these were the simple joys that made daily life just a little easier to bear. For the common folk, these foods were not just treats. They were a vital part of their survival, offering quick sustenance that fueled long hours of work. For the wealthier classes, they were indulgences, small pleasures that helped pass the time between grand feasts and celebrations. Yet, as comforting and indulgent as these medieval junk foods were, they were not without consequences. The same pies, pastries, and fried foods that filled bellies and satisfied cravings were, in many ways, a double-edged sword. While they offered convenience and comfort, they lacked the balance and nutritional value necessary for long-term health. They were foods made to please the senses, but not to nourish the body in any meaningful way. Let's take a moment to imagine the medieval diet more closely. The bread, though an essential staple, was often made from coarse flour and lacked the vitamins and minerals needed for good health. The pies and pastries, filled with whatever ingredients were available, meat, fruit, or even more exotic spices, were often rich, heavy, and high in fats and sugars. These foods, though satisfying in the moment, didn't provide the necessary nutrients to maintain a balanced diet. It was common for people to eat the same foods day in and day out with little variation. And while these foods could give a temporary burst of energy, they often didn't offer the vitamins and minerals the body needed to thrive. One of the most notable consequences of this poor diet was the rise in tooth decay. The high sugar content in many medieval pastries, cakes, and sweetened treats created the perfect environment for tooth rot. It wasn't unusual for medieval people to suffer from toothaches, cavities, and even tooth loss at a young age. The sugars in their foods, combined with the lack of proper dental hygiene, led to the breakdown of their teeth, making everyday tasks like chewing difficult and painful. For a time, dental care was almost non-existent, and the consequences of a sugar-laden diet became all too apparent. Similarly, there were the more obvious health problems associated with an imbalanced diet, obesity, and other weight-related issues. While the rich, with their access to large quantities of food, were more likely to suffer from obesity, the poor were not immune to its effects either. The indulgence in cheap, calorie-dense foods like pies, pastries, and fried meats could lead to weight gain over time. But unlike today, there was no widespread understanding of how food impacted health, and little attention was paid to the long-term consequences of eating such foods regularly. The lack of a balanced diet also led to other health problems. Conditions like scurvy, caused by a lack of fresh fruits and vegetables, were common among the poor. The wealthy had access to fresh produce and exotic fruits, but even they often lacked the proper balance of nutrition. Malnutrition, though not widely recognized at the time, was likely an underlying factor in many ailments that affected both the rich and the poor. The over-reliance on breads, meats, and sweets created a diet that, while indulgent, was ultimately lacking in the vital nutrients needed for long-term health. The connection between the medieval diet and modern-day fast food is striking. Just as the medieval junk food provided a quick, convenient solution to hunger, today's fast food serves the same purpose. Both offer indulgence and comfort, but neither provides the proper nourishment the body needs to stay healthy. Modern junk food, with its high sugar content, processed fats, and lack of nutritional value, mirrors the medieval indulgences in many ways. The convenience of fast food, much like the quick pies and pastries of medieval times, often comes at the cost of our health. So, what does this all mean for us today? How do we balance indulgence with nourishment in our own lives? In a world where fast food and quick snacks are often the go-to choice for a busy lifestyle, how do we ensure that we are taking care of our bodies while still allowing ourselves the occasional indulgence? It's a question that medieval people didn't have the luxury of asking, but one that we are faced with daily. As we reflect on the medieval diet and its impact on health, think about your own food choices. Are they driven by convenience, like the pies and pastries of the past? Do you find yourself indulging in sweet or salty treats, knowing that they may not be the healthiest option, but still offering a brief moment of satisfaction? How do you balance those indulgences with the need for proper nourishment? Are there times when the pleasure of a quick, comforting meal outweighs the long-term benefits of a more balanced diet? It's a delicate balance, isn't it? The desire for comfort and indulgence is as strong today as it was in medieval times. But unlike the people of the past, we have the knowledge and understanding of nutrition, of how food affects our bodies and our health. Perhaps it is time to reflect on how we can enjoy the best of both worlds, the joy of indulgent foods and the nourishment our bodies truly need. What do you think? How do you manage the balance between indulgence and nourishment in your own life? How do you see your food choices affecting your health in the long run? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments or on social media, and let's continue this conversation about how we can strike a balance between enjoyment and well-being, just as our medieval ancestors did with their indulgent, yet sometimes harmful, foods. As we've seen, medieval food, even the seemingly indulgent junk food, was once a comforting escape from the monotony of daily life. The warm pies, sweet pastries, and fried meats were not just about filling bellies. They were about taking a brief moment to indulge in something. Simple, something easy when the world around you was often filled with hard labor and uncertainty. These foods were accessible and comforting, meant to be eaten quickly and without ceremony, offering a respite in a world that rarely allowed for relaxation. But as the centuries wore on and times became more difficult, that culture of indulgence began to fade, transforming into something far more utilitarian as necessity replaced luxury. Imagine yourself in a medieval town, perhaps years after the height of indulgence in the markets and kitchens. The streets that were once teeming with vendors selling pies, cakes, and freshly fried fish are quieter now, the air heavier with the scent of something less desirable. There's a sense of scarcity in the air. People no longer have the luxury of leisurely snacks between work and chores. The feast has given way to famine. The easy comfort of sweet treats and hearty meals has been replaced by a world where food is no longer an indulgence, but a necessity, something to simply keep hunger at bay, not to bring joy. The decline of the junk food culture was a slow one, but its transformation was driven by a combination of factors: famines, wars, and a changing climate that made food less abundant and less reliable. The medieval world had its share of prosperous years, when trade routes were open and food could be imported from distant lands. But these were followed by periods of scarcity, when crops failed, when bad harvests became the norm, and when entire communities were forced to scrape by with what little they could find. In these times, the luxury of indulgent foods like sweet pastries or fried pies seemed like a distant memory. For those who could no longer afford or access the ingredients necessary to make the rich, comforting foods they once enjoyed, there was little choice but to turn to simpler, more basic fare. Bread remained a staple, but it was no longer the soft, golden loaves of flour and butter. It was coarse, heavy, and dark, often made from rye or barley rather than wheat. The variety of food available in the markets dwindled, and what remained was often too expensive or out of reach for the common folk. The indulgences that once provided comfort were gone, replaced by the stark reality of survival. In these leaner times, food preservation techniques became more important than ever. The need to store food for the long, cold months of winter or during times of crop failure gave rise to new methods of preserving food. Smoking, salting, pickling, and drying were all employed to keep food edible for longer periods of time. Meat, once enjoyed fresh and fried, was now salted and preserved, often hanging from the rafters of kitchens, ready to be eaten in small portions. Fruit, which had once been turned into pies and pastries, was dried or preserved in syrup to last through the winter months. These preservation techniques, while essential for survival, also marked a shift in how people viewed food. No longer could they indulge in the luxury of a fresh fruit tart or a rich meat pie. Instead, they turned to salted meats and dried bread foods that kept them alive but didn't offer the same joy or comfort. This shift in food culture also reflected the larger social and economic changes of the time. The growing instability of the medieval period, marked by war, plagues, and economic hardship, made indulgence seem like a distant luxury. The focus became survival, and food became something to be stretched and preserved rather than enjoyed in its natural state. The simple pleasures of a quick pastry or a warm loaf of bread, once the highlight of a busy day, became rare treats in a world where every bite counted. Even the once common pies, filled with fruit or meat, were now seen as too extravagant, and people made do with what they could grow or gather themselves. But despite the decline in availability, there were still moments of indulgence, albeit rare ones. Even in times of famine and scarcity, festivals, weddings, and religious holidays provided a brief respite from the harshness of daily life. During these times, there was still an attempt to recreate the past the rich. Spiced cakes, the pies, and the sweet pastries were brought out for the occasion, albeit in much smaller quantities. These foods became symbols of celebration, reminders of a time when life was simpler, and food was a joy rather than a necessity. The transformation of medieval junk food from a luxury to a necessity serves as a reminder of how quickly times can change. What was once a symbol of indulgence and comfort can, in a short period, become a scarce resource, only to be cherished in fleeting moments of relief. The same foods that once brought joy now carry a weight of survival, and the simple act of eating becomes less about pleasure and more about enduring the hardships of life. Now, as we reflect on this transformation, think about your own life. What would you do if your food options suddenly shrank? If the indulgent treats you enjoy today became too expensive or too rare to obtain? How would you cope? Would you find comfort in simple foods and the basics that keep you going? Or would you long for the joy of those small indulgences that once made life feel a little brighter? It's an interesting thought, isn't it? How food choices and access to food can change so dramatically. How what once was commonplace can slip away in the face of adversity. Share your thoughts with us. How do you think you would adjust if your food options suddenly became limited? How would you cope in a time when indulgence was no longer possible and survival became the main focus of your meals? I look forward to hearing your reflections. As we conclude our journey through the surprising world of medieval junk food, it's hard not to notice the ways in which history repeats itself. The simple, comforting pies, pastries, and fried foods that were once the indulgences of a bustling marketplace are not so different from the quick, easily accessible treats we find ourselves reaching for today. These foods, while often seen as indulgences or even unhealthy choices, were not just about filling the stomach, they were about comfort, convenience, and the small joys that could be found in the midst of a demanding life. In the medieval world, food was often a way to escape from the grind of daily labor. The busy rhythm of life meant that quick, easy-to-make meals were essential for keeping people going. Pies, pastries, and breads were practical solutions to hunger, but they were also a source of relief and comfort. These were foods that didn't require long preparation times or intricate cooking skills. They were quick, easy, and accessible, much like the modern-day snacks we reach for when we're too tired, too busy, or too worn out to prepare something more complex. The common people, in particular, found comfort in these foods, much like we do today. But the medieval world wasn't just about survival. It was also about pleasure. Even in the midst of hard work and limited resources, people sought out the simple joys of sweet and savory indulgences. Whether it was the warmth of a fresh loaf of bread or the sweet, spicy aroma of a freshly baked pie, food was a way to momentarily escape from the struggles of life. Just as today we crave the quick satisfaction of comfort food, medieval people found solace in these small, humble meals. They weren't about luxury. They were about providing something familiar and comforting to hold on to during difficult times. As we look back on these medieval foods, it's clear that the same desire for quick and comforting food exists in us today. Whether it's a piece of pizza, a candy bar, or a bag of chips, we reach for these foods not just because they satisfy hunger, but because they offer us a brief respite from the stresses of modern life. These foods give us something to hold on to in a world that moves so quickly, just as medieval pies and pastries gave people a moment of calm and indulgence in their busy lives. The appeal of junk food then and now lies not just in its convenience, but in its ability to provide comfort when we need it most. Of course, the challenge then as now is the balance between indulgence and nourishment. While these quick foods are comforting, they are not always the healthiest choice. In medieval times, the indulgence in rich, sugary pastries and greasy pies often came at the cost of good health, leading to problems like tooth decay, obesity, and malnutrition. Similarly, today, our indulgence in fast food and sugary snacks can contribute to health problems such as weight gain, diabetes, and heart disease. The key, as always, lies in balance. It's not about eliminating comfort foods altogether, but rather learning to enjoy them in moderation, while also making space for the foods that nourish our bodies and keep us healthy in the long run. The history of medieval junk food teaches us that food has always been about more than just survival. It has always been about pleasure, comfort, and connection. Even in a time when life was harsh and unpredictable, people found ways to indulge in small moments of joy. Whether it was a quick bite from the market or a rich dessert at a feast, food has always been a way to mark special moments, to connect with loved ones, and to give ourselves a brief escape from the pressures of life. As you reflect on this, think about your own food choices. What will you eat tomorrow? Will it be for comfort, for convenience, or for health? Do you reach for quick, indulgent foods to help you unwind after a long day? Or do you focus on meals that nourish your body? Perhaps there is a middle ground, a way to balance the two, choosing foods that both comfort and nourish, providing you with the energy you need while also giving you that small indulgence when you need it most. Food has always been a reflection of who we are, of our needs and desires, and of our relationship to the world around us. The way we eat, the choices we make are shaped by our history, our culture, and our own personal experiences. Just as medieval people sought comfort in quick and easy foods, so too do we turn to our own familiar snacks to bring us comfort. The difference, of course, is that we now have the knowledge and understanding of how food affects our bodies. We know that balance is key, and that while indulgence can be a part of life, it must be tempered with nourishment. So, as we close this chapter of history, take a moment to reflect on how food shapes your life. How do your food choices connect you to the past? How do they shape your present? What role does food play in your own moments of comfort, indulgence, and nourishment? I encourage you to share your thoughts with others, to reflect on how food continues to shape our lives, just as it has shaped the lives of those who came before us. And as we finish this journey through the medieval world, perhaps you'll consider the small joys that food brings to your life. After all, it's the simple, comforting meals that often carry the most meaning, whether they're made with fresh ingredients or passed down through generations. Thank you for joining me in exploring the rich and surprising history of medieval junk food. May you find comfort in the food choices you make, and may they continue to bring you both joy and nourishment.